Looks like most of us are coming in. 1, 2, 8 of us. Trying to see who we are missing. All right, I think we're all here. Diane, did you want to take roll call?
I'm sorry, Ed. I'll do council first and then I'll do administration. That's okay?
That's fine.
Okay. Creamer,
Present.
Greg,
Present.
Halter,
Here.
Ern Kane,
Here.
Lewis,
Present.
Littman,
Here.
Lombardi,
Here.
Starrett,
Here.
and Barrett.
Present.
Mayor Kathy Catazero Perry. Mayor. Barb Sylvester,
Present.
Jane Ferraro,
I'm here.
Debbie Buck,
Present.
Justin Richard,
Here.
Bill Bartos,
Present.
David Crock, Jason Popeil,
Yes, I'm here.
Samantha Walters,
Here.
David Maley,
Present.
Steve Pedro. Let's see here. Chief Burgasser,
I'm here.
Lori Katagides Boron,
Here.
Tony Ulrich, Frank Silla, Terry Argent, Beverly Lewis, Lee McBride, or Jimmy Johnson. Okay. Thank you.
Diane, Greg McHugh, engineering.
Okay.
Diane, I got on. Claudette Eisnick.
Okay.
All right. In order to follow our regular proceedings that we've been following lately, I will open up the floor to President Eisnick if she has any updates she would like to share with council.
Thank you, Councilman Lewis. Mark Lombardi or Diane sent us an email out that we do have Wi-Fi there at council. When do you think would be a good idea to try to go in and see if we can have a meeting there, Ed?
I still like the idea of our first attempt being a work session.
All right, then how about in 2 weeks?
Well, we need to order the equipment and everything yet, guys.
I'm okay with that. Do we have to vote on that?
If it's in our budget and it's not of a high number, the president could just sign off on the expense.
Well, I'm pretty sure that that's going to be paid for out of the coronavirus money. Is that correct, Diane?
Yes.
And that money's available, Ed.
Okay, so essentially what I think what would happen is the president of council, using her administrative duties, could direct our clerk to move forward with it. And then it would show up on our agenda as a bill to be paid, like the other bills that we pay.
And then we'll just turn it in.
This is Linda Littman. May I ask a question?
Absolutely, Linda.
I'd like to direct it to Mr. Lombardi. Could you share with us exactly what equipment will be purchased and what will the amount be that we would have to pay, even though it would then be coming out of the FEMA grant?
Certainly. I'm doing this by memory. I got the emails and discussed this a few weeks ago, but I believe it's about $2,500. The equipment that we would need are 2 laptops, one for Diane to administer the meetings to the public, one for whichever councilman would be in the conference room for that week, because we can only have 10 in that room total. We would need there are 2 boxes that Bob Jones said that we would need to be able to hook our sound system into Diane's laptop so that all of our microphones will come through clearly. And then we need to get a camera that would just, show as much of the room as possible.
Anyone else have any questions or concerns?
Yes, to the point of having one council person have to rotate out. I would like to inquire again of the health department. It's recently come to my attention that other community groups have had meetings. They have spoken with the health department and been authorized to have them. And from what I can tell, they exceed 10. So if other community organizations are able to have these meetings, why wouldn't city council be able to have 11 or 12 to authorize the press as well?
It's an interesting question. I wish I had an answer to that. Every time I suggest going in, I'm told that we can't because it's more than 10.
Mr. Lewis, this Mrs. Argent had told me that she even talked to the governor's office and was told 10 was the limit. So she's not willing to go against the governor's orders, and rightfully so. So I think we're going to be stuck at 10 unless Governor DeWine or the state health commissioner, relax that order a little bit.
Well, that's where my issue comes from, is I'm aware of other community meetings that have gotten permission from the health department to hold their meeting, and it was in excess of 10. So why are they getting permission and we are not?
That I can't answer. Like I said, Harry Argent told me that she did talk to the governor's office and they said no. So, or the health department, I'm not sure which. I don't want to speak for her since she's not here, but she did try. I do know that, and was, turned down on it. So maybe they might be willing to relax again. Maybe she could make another call or two. I'm not really sure. I'll be more than happy to call her tomorrow morning and ask her and see what she can do.
Ed, you are certain that other people are having meetings with more than 10?
Yep, I received an email inviting me to one that I could not make. And knowing the group that was holding it, there was more than 10.
So what's your suggestion?
And it stated in the email that they were working with the health department to bring this into fruition.
Is this the health department of Massillon?
I would assume so, because it's a Massillon organization that held their meeting in the city of Massillon.
Ed, this is Linda. Can we ask, or maybe if Mr. Lombardi is going to make a phone call to Terry again, that we make sure that they realize that even Claudette, who would be perhaps our 10th person, is more than 6 feet away from any of the other members. I guess I don't have a problem with anyone other than the 10 of us being in a conference room, perhaps in front of a laptop. But I guess I would say that with the 9 council members and the council president, that she should be presiding over the meeting from her, I'll say not pulpit, but whatever you would call that, her seating, and that is a significant number of feet away from any other party. Even if Diane is in the other room, that the council, as well as council president, would be present in the same room.
We have partitions up. And I know if you looked at Friday's newspaper, at Louisville's game, their student section was next to each other, shoulder to shoulder, with no face masks on. I guess I just am having a hard time with the, okay for you guys, but not for you guys. Ed, I don't want you to say who the organization is that's having the meeting, because I don't want to get anyone in trouble. But if you could I'll call Terry Argent tomorrow and let me know who they are, and we can address it head on, because I just don't understand this.
Exactly my sentiments.
Anyone else? We'll talk after the meeting, Ed. You can give me the name of the organizations. All right, thank you.
All right, community development.
And also, downtown really looks great. I've been down there several times. Other than the fact that a constituent sent me a picture of a trash can that was well overloaded. I shared that with Barb Sylvester, and it was addressed. But no, it looks real good. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Community development.
I have nothing new today.
Environmental.
Nothing this week.
Health and welfare.
Sorry, nothing?
Parks and Rec.
I have nothing.
Police and fire.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Yes, we do have one piece of legislation that pertains to accepting a FEMA grant to provide CPR assist devices. We did have Chief Burgasser go through the award letter as well as the criteria that must be met in order to receive that FEMA grant. And according to the award letter, a requirement of receiving this award, which would be a total of $35,363.64, is to contribute up to, it says equal to or greater than 10% of the total project. Therefore, to complete this project or these purchases, the city would have to contribute $3,536.36, which then the total approved budget would be $38,900. He also included that as, in addition to the CPR assist devices, there would also be, I believe, not more than one. Yes, there'll be one bariatric cot that will be purchased, as well as the 3 CPR assist devices. I guess I will ask Chief Burgasser, if he is on the line, if he'd like to add anything for explanation for receipt of this grant. I do see that the September 4th date is stated, that we must acknowledge acceptance of this prior to September 4th. And as we know, the 4th is on Friday. And are we going to be too late then, waiting until our first meeting of September, which would be September 7th? Chief Burgasser?
Mrs. Littman, you already passed that grant. This is the COVID grant, and its date of acceptance is September 27th.
Oh, okay. Do I have a different one here?
That one we already passed. That was for the CPR assist devices in the cot, and that was passed last week.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
So
last meeting.
is there another one for this week or no?
There is. We got a
Okay.
grant for $18,572.70.
I apologize. I have the wrong printout in front of me then. So will you please explain that to us then?
Sure. We were allowed to write a grant, a supplemental FEMA grant for COVID, PPE, and some uniform modifications as a result for our EMS units. And we wrote that grant for $18,572.70. Again, it's a 90%, 10% match. We wrote it for gowns, gloves, face shields, and respirators. And they're varying numbers, totaling up to right around $14,000. We also wrote for coveralls for our EMS folks. If they purchase coveralls, 2 sets of coveralls each person, then we will reimburse them. Again, that's a 90%, 10% match. So we've already spent the money in terms of face shields, respirators, gloves, and gowns. So really all we have to do is submit the invoices and they'll send them back to, send the money back to us, less than 10%.
Are there any other questions from the Police and Fire Committee regarding this grant acceptance?
This is Jim Thayer, and I'd give my approval on this for sure.
Thank you. Council, do you have any other questions for Chief Burgasser?
Jill Creamer, I have a question for the chief.
Yes, Joe.
Chief, in the documents submitted to us, it states that the coveralls will be washed. I'm just asking, is that washing being done by the employee, or is the city washing those coveralls if they have an exposure to a positive COVID patient?
That's going to depend on how the exposure occurs. If they have a known patient that they're transporting, what happens is that they bring a second set and they will wash all of their clothing at the fire station.
Okay.
If they just have a, you know, if they have routine patients, they don't have an exposure or a known exposure, then they usually wash them at home, and we provide uniform allowance for that reason.
Great, thank you. Thanks for clarifying.
Any other questions from council?
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chief Burgasser. Diana, I give my approval as well to see it on the agenda next week.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
I do not give approval.
I'm sorry.
I do not give approval.
Okay. Okay.
That it, Ms. Littman?
Yes, that's all I have.
Public utilities?
I have nothing this week.
Rules and courts?
I have no request for legislation this week. I do have a subject I'd like to bring up that we broached before, touched on, and I think needs further discussion. And I want to open it up for that tonight, if it makes sense. And that is the subject of abstaining votes on council. What we want to do as a council, and do we need to clean up the language? It's already in legislation, and change that language. I'm just kind of opening that up for discussion.
I know I've brought this up, and I guess the only thing I can say is, to me, it doesn't matter which way council decides to go and how they want to address this. It just seems like the language that's currently in council rule is a little bit ambiguous and not clear. So whichever direction we go, we just need to make sure we clean up the language to clearly state that, so there's no confusion moving forward. And I think there could be benefit to the council for clarity as to, you know, what would classify a the need for an abstention, such as any kind of conflict. Where's that line really at, so that we're all clear of what the expectations are for each of us.
This is Linda Littman. I would say that I would be in agreement for perhaps clarifying any ambiguity in that particular rule, but I would also say I think there are other rules within our administrative code that we could use some clarity on also. So I guess I would say if we are going to be looking at one of the rules, that we would be looking at other rules as well. Perhaps the law director and Mr. Bartos would make some suggestions to us as far as legal language that would clarify. I know they've given us their opinion, which I think we should follow. But I also think that there is more than one rule that needs to be adjusted with some more clarifying language. And if we're doing one, we should be looking at others.
I agree with that, Mrs. Lippman. I'm wondering if Mr. Bartos, if you're still on the line, or Mr. Richard, if you would be willing to receive requests from council on particular pieces of legislation that need clarifying language, or that the council people need to discuss clarifying language.
Mr. Chairman? This is Justin. Oh,
Yes.
sorry.
Well,
Mr.
Justin,
Chairman?
you can take it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I would just say that certainly, you know, and Bill will probably, he'll talk after I do, but there is essentially a rule and or specific holdings that say, regardless of ambiguous or vague our codified ordinance may be, it certainly does not trump that of a state issued ordinance. And I think that that truly is what this comes down to, is that at least in my department's opinion, they've defined two separate things. One is a recusal and one is an excusal. An excusal, of course, takes permission and it gives the procedure. And I believe that these two are really being lumped together, when in fact a recusal is a possible ethical violation. So that really relies on the individual to make that call, and nobody can make them for it, because ultimately they could be held criminally liable. So even though things may have been interpreted differently in the past, things have changed since then. So now the state has clarified, and there have been different holdings, I think, over the past years since this was maybe addressed. So with that being said, we'll look at anything you guys give us, and certainly we can offer our legal opinion, but as has been pointed out, it's just an opinion. Now, it is an opinion with protection, because you do have that if you follow our opinion. You certainly don't if you don't follow it. But anything submitted to my office, we will always review, and any request, you know, we will always do our best to fulfill it. Bill, do you have anything to add?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Bartos, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I would just echo what Justin said as far as we'd be, you know, I'd be happy to review any changes that council would like to propose, or any ambiguities that council feel, any members of council feel exist, and happy to work with you on any, you know, proposed revisions you may have, or happy to suggest any revisions. As far as the current immediate matter, there actually are Ohio ethics opinions going back to the 1980s on this matter that basically point to the fact that the Ohio ethics laws are general laws of the state. So not only can't city charters, which we, you know, we're a statutory city, so not only couldn't a charter city and their city charter trump the Ohio ethics laws, but we can't either in our local codified ordinances. The 86.002 advisory opinion from the Ohio Ethics Commission, the requirement of a criminal statute that a public official refrain from participating in discussions and abstaining from voting on an issue would override any charter provision prohibiting abstentions without the approval of council. Once again, as most of you know, or all of you know, a charter is considered essentially a mini constitution of a city. Given that we don't have a charter, the next best thing that we have is a codified ordinance. If a charter is trumped, the codified ordinances would be trumped as well, and that seems to be conferred in confirmed in other ethics opinions. So as Justin said, it's just, we do render opinions, but we're not just shooting from the hip here. We do our research, we cross-check things, and we go back and look at everything we can.
So one question, Mr. Bartos. So are you stating then that the state law says that abstention is a matter of the individual's personal choice, and whatever they choose is what it will be, and there is no recourse to the council if they think that abstention is not being made in good faith?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Essentially, that appears to be what the ethics laws are saying, and that the council, can't override the ethics laws, which say, thou shalt not vote if you have a conflict of interest. Well, who's to make that decision? It lies with that individual council person. I welcome, and Justin I'm sure does as well, we welcome any of you to discussing with us any potential conflicts, or if you feel like you need to discuss it with us before a council meeting comes up, please discuss it with us. But as far as if council can vet whether an abstention is legitimate or not, that's clearly spelled out in the in past ethics as being an invalid local codified ordinance. And really, it's I think it falls to the political process. If the constituents and the residents see somebody who's always abstaining all the time, there's always the ballot box to deal with that. And but at the same time, I think that all of you are on council because you want to make the hard decisions, and you want to affect the community in a positive way, and you're not here to abstain. I don't think any of you would have ran for office if you were here to just abstain. So, but yes, the long answer to your question is yes.
First of all, I agree 100% with what you just said. None of us are here for the purpose of abstaining. We want to make those hard decisions and take responsibility for them. Did you just offer, though, that if any of us has a question as to our own opinion on a possible conflict of interest, that we can discuss it with you or Mr. Richard to kind of get some direction on that as to whether it's actually a valid reason for abstention? You'll give us some help with that?
Mr. Chairman, absolutely. We in the law department represent all city officials and city bodies referenced in Title VII of the Ohio Revised Code, which includes city council. And so we're happy to speak with any members of council about any potential conflicts of interest or any questions that may exist with the Ohio ethics laws.
Okay, thank you very much. Mrs. Stare, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. I would just ask if we could maybe have those ethics opinions and things emailed to Linda, or emailed to Diane, sorry, Linda, so we can all just kind of read them and have them for our reference. We often get those opinions given to us, and I think it would just help all council members if we can view those and kind of look over them.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mrs. Sterrett. Any other members of council have anything else to discuss on this subject?
Yeah, Mr. Gregg, I think today's conversation was good. I think this is the direction we've been heading for, the few weeks we've been talking about it. And I think we next week may possibly have this come up, but it sounds like everyone is on the same page unless someone's differing now. But I would still recommend that we go into the rule and just make it a little bit more concrete, because in 6 years, Mr. Richard might not be there and the 9 of us might not be there, and the question might come up again.
I agree. Anyone else? All right, thank you. That's all I had for this evening.
All right, streets and highways.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lewis. There is one piece here that came from the engineer department about vacating a plot and for drainage. I would call on those maybe to, if there's any questions, and explain what they got going on here.
Yeah, I can take this. This is Jason. This is the site where the storage, lock it up storage is being built. And prior to construction, there was a storm drainage ditch that ran along this easement. It's no longer necessary. They're going to be graded over and become part of a storm sewer system and parking lot. So they're just requesting that the existing easement be vacated.
Thank you, Mr. Popeil. So this is just a matter of a routine
Yep.
issue that we just need to approve to get it cleared up.
Yeah, that's correct. It's no longer necessary to have an easement there.
All right, thank you. Then I would my verbal to put this on the agenda for next week.
I would give you the second, Mr. Thurett. It's Nancy Halter.
I give my verbal, Jill Creamer.
Thank you. And Jim, there was another request for legislation that was submitted today. I don't know if you received it or not, regarding the Wells Road widening project.
That was the just in one, right?
I'm sorry?
It was labeled just in. Yes, I have that. Okay. That also came from the engineer, and I would defer to his explanation.
I think Mr. Bartos, this one is better explained by you, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I can take this if it's okay.
Certainly, please.
Thank you. As you'll recall, at your last business meeting, you passed Ordinance 78/2020 that dealt with all of the properties that need to be acquired, or the interest in properties that need to be acquired for the right-of-way acquisition for Wales Road, the Wales Road project. This is a scaled-down version of that list. The properties that have either been acquired or in the process of being acquired are removed from this list, and this list includes those properties which the city has not been unable to acquire via the negotiation process, or it appears we're not going to be able to acquire via the negotiation process. The owners have either not responded or stopped responding to inquiries related to the process. In some cases, the entity that owned the property is unknown or may no longer exist if it's a corporate entity or a legal fiction. And so this is the next piece of legislation. I mentioned before that there would be several pieces of legislation related to this. This is that next piece of legislation. It's required in Chapter 719 as the request states. It will declare the city's intent to appropriate the property. After this, final notices will be sent out by the mayor. And then the law department would then file petitions for appropriation with the common pleas court, essentially initiating the eminent domain process.
Thank you. That was very thorough. So in essence, then, we need to give you this leverage. Be okay to do this.
Mr. Chairman, yes, this is a required piece of legislation by the Ohio Revised Code. The municipal corporation, the legislative authority of the municipal corporation must pass a resolution declaring the city's intent to appropriate property in order for us to proceed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Then, Diane, I would like to give my verbal to get this on the agenda for next week also.
I also will do that, Nancy Halter.
Jill?
I will give my verbal also.
Good.
But I have a question. Can I ask a question? I'm looking at the property owners, and I don't know if engineering can answer this. What would be some reasons that these property owners would not agree to this? Are these properties, are we taking, is it a wider portion? I'm just trying to understand this list and why the refusal.
Yeah, Joe, I would have to defer that to AECom. They're the actual company doing the negotiations. They would have reasons. I don't know the answer to your question. I think 90% of them are just non-responsive. But yeah, I would have to defer to AECom for that.
Is anyone present that can?
No, I can find out for you. And
I mean, I'm just kind of surprised with some of the names on here, and I'm just trying to get a better understanding why the refusal. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Lombardi's got his hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Thurrott. I just have one question. Since we can't get a hold of these owners, and in cases we don't even know them, if we pass this legislation, are they just forfeiting that part of the property?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
No, that is what the next step is for. That would be the eminent domain process, and that's what leads to the court action. And so they don't just forfeit it necessarily. I believe that the revised code does allow us to go ahead and begin work on the project immediately, but we do have to take that fair market value number that you see established there and put it in escrow with the court as part of our filing. So, but it's not just that they, are automatically giving it up. They do have right to due process and a day in court, if you will. And then to Member Kramer's point, I'm looking at the latest update I see here from the engineering department, and it just appears that, as I mentioned before, the majority of these just haven't responded, and that could be for various reasons. I don't know if it's that they aren't, they're refusing to negotiate or they are refusing to agree. It could be for various reasons that they haven't responded yet, but there will be that final notice, as I mentioned, prior to the filing of the petition. And also the filing of the petition, obviously they'll receive notice of that as well. So there's a good chance that that will also lead to the favorable and agreeable resolution of this process.
Thank you. Any other questions for council? And Mr. Lewis, I'm finished.
Thank you. Okay, finance. The first piece we have is please prepare legislation authorize the mayor to submit the following applications for funding of Ohio Public Works Commission for the funding year of 2021, and to execute all necessary documentation to secure the funding. This is Lincoln Way Streetscape Phase 3 and Warmington Road improvements. Do we have someone here that can speak to those two projects?
Yeah, sure. This is Jason again. Yeah, this is just permission to apply for OPWC funding. Lincoln Way Streetscape would be sidewalk and resurfacing and lighting upgrades, and Warmington Road would be very similar to what we did on Richville, a slight widening with curb and gutter and storm sewer improvements.
Speaking of streetscape phase 3, you mentioned sidewalks, resurfacing, lighting upgrades. What areas would that would be included in that?
Oh, sorry. Was I muted? Greg,
Yeah.
Greg McHugh, you might know the limits right off the top of your head better than I.
Ed, this is Greg McHugh.
Yes, please.
Sorry, Jason. I think you were muted there, Jason. Phase 3 includes from 1st Street Northeast to 4th Street Northeast, and also 1st and 1st Southwest and 1st Northwest intersections, just west of where we ended there.
Okay. All right. Anybody? I see you, Ms. Lippman, but anybody from finance have a question? All right, Ms. Lippman, go ahead.
Thank you, Ed. Do we have an idea on if we're submitting the application for funding, what we are looking at as total dollars for either or both of these projects?
Do you want total project cost or what we're going to be asking for?
No, just total project cost.
Yeah, Warmington Road is about 1.358 million. In Lincoln Way 3, I have to update, so I don't have a number for you on that yet. We're still working through that.
Well, then follow up. What are we asking for?
That we're gonna, to maximize our points, we're gonna provide 26% of the costs and ask for a grant for the remaining 74%. So for Warmington, we'd be asking for about 1 million and we'd be paying about 350,000.
I know in the past we've been able to go to OPWC and do similar ratios, and then we were able to get another source to come in and help with that remaining percentage. Is that going to be the case in these projects?
I don't think there's anything immediately available. If anything comes up, absolutely, it's our #1 priority. But as of right now, I think the only match is going to be our local match.
Thank you. Any other questions concerning this? All right, I'll give my verbal to have it placed on the agenda for Monday.
I will give my verbal, Megan Starrett.
I will also give my verbal, Mike Gregg.
Thank you.
All right, the next piece we have here says appropriation of funds from the community development for the following activities of the fiscal year 2021. Ms. Walters, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you. So this appropriation is for the CDBG CV dollars that council approved the budget for back some time ago. Program approval has now been received by HUD, which is good news. So I'm coming to you to appropriate the money so we can get some of these programs up and running here. Most specifically, of course, the business assistance loan program. I do have several applications for that, and I've been working with business owners to try and process these and move forward as soon as possible. So if we could put the appropriations through, that's the next step in getting assistance out here to our community. So I presented the legislation. We have it there for the business program, but also for the subrecipients for the different public service agencies.
All right, so then for clarification, the piece that I believe we have coming up for third reading from you, how do like the compare and contrast, I guess?
So the piece coming up for third reading is the normal program year money, the CDBG program year 2020. This piece is the CDBG CV funding, which is that additional allocation that we had received from HUD to prepare for the coronavirus or respond to the coronavirus. So that's that $392,000 that we had discussed. So they are two separate allocation requests.
Thank you. Anybody else have any additional questions?
Jill Creamer, I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Creamer.
Can Ms. Walters just explain, and you probably have told us this before and I just can't recall, what is Stark Fresh?
Stark Fresh is actually a new subrecipient this year that we're excited to be able to help. It's a mobile grocery market. So what they do is they actually bring fresh produce into the neighborhoods, and specifically low and moderate income neighborhoods, and the money that we're providing assists with some of the funding for paying for that to have the market come in, and they also subsidize some of the costs, and they do accept food stamps and things like that. So this is the first time we've worked with Stark Fresh, and they should be, once they receive funding from us, we'll of course get a little bit more information on their schedule when they plan on coming in, but they are focused on low to moderate income neighborhoods.
So it hasn't been implemented yet in Massillon.
they'll be able to expand their stops in Massillon. They have been in Massillon before, but the majority of the funding that they receive has been from the city of Canton. So this is the first time the city of Massillon is partnering with funding, so they'll be able to significantly expand their stops in Massillon.
Can you just provide me additional information when this starts in Massillon for my Southeast community? This is something that I keep hearing a lot request for, so this will help us out greatly. So I appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. Sure.
Ms. Lippman?
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I just have a question regarding the services and contracts item of $10,000 allocated. Can Samantha clarify what that would be spent on?
Ms. Walters?
I'm sorry, I muted myself again. So what the services and contracts line is for, HUD allows for a certain percentage for administration expenses, and basically that would be for advertising of the program, and if we have to pay for any additional expenses as far as the copier or things like that, supplies that we might need for the programs. So that line item, I think, it is significantly lower than the allowable cost of HUD's administration cap, but we did set that aside to cover any advertising costs or things that we might come up with throughout the implementation, because this is a new program that we have not done so far with the coronavirus dollars.
I have one question regarding that Stark Fresh as well that Ms. Kramer was asking about. Could we get a list of the stops, or could we request other locations for them to stop? I guess I'm also thinking of the south east side where they're having an issue with whether the Dollar General should be erected in that area, and one of the, I'll say, complaints or concerns was the lack of fresh produce that entity would bring to that neighborhood. So I guess I'm wondering, could we request certain locations for them to stop at now that we're funding?
I do believe they have their locations already mapped out, but I can tell you that the southeast side is on that list. They look specifically for food deserts, which is where fresh meats or produce are not available within a 1 mile, basically walking distance. So I do know that there is a focus on the southeast side for that, and I can get you a list of the stops. I'll reach out to Stark Fresh and see what's available.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And then just for the ease, Mr. Hernkane, would this provide a similar conflict for you?
Yes, as it has in the past. I would recuse myself from this at the meeting, and I'm also going to go back and recuse myself from the First Street Department one, because that easement was done by the company I work for. So I was going to say both of those for Monday for you.
Okay. All right, just so that we're clear on Monday and we know it's coming.
Thanks.
All right. All right, I give my verbal to go ahead and place that on the agenda.
I give my verbal, Megan Starrett.
This is Mike Gregg. I give my verbal as well.
Thank you.
All right. The next piece we have is an appropriation of $16,884.27 of the unappropriated general fund, and this is for the fire department supplies and materials, and this is to fund COVID-19 supplies and materials previously expended, and also allow for purchasing and reimbursement of our employees' coveralls as part of the PPE ensemble. I know Chief Parker Sir had already mentioned this earlier. Are there any further questions regarding this? I give my verbal to have this placed on the agenda.
Megan Starrett, verbal.
Mike Gregg, verbal.
Thank you.
The next one is please prepare an ordinance to reduce the appropriations in the summer concert series fund by a total of $79,906.33, and this is due to the cancellation of those concerts. And most of these, and these funds are all donated dollars anyways, but we'd be reducing it. Are there any questions or discussion? I give my verbal for it to be on the agenda for Monday.
Megan Starrett, verbal.
Mike Gregg, verbal.
Thank you.
Next is please prepare a resolution authorizing the sale during the calendar year of 2020 of city-owned motor vehicles which are not needed for public use or obsolete or unfit for use. We've done this many times in the past. It's a way for us to unload assets that we are not currently using. Ms. Sylvester, are you able to speak to how many vehicles or which vehicles these would include?
Good evening. Yes, I can. Right now, we have one vehicle from the fire department, and we also have 7 vehicles in our street department. And I am waiting for a final list from our police department, but they do also have some vehicles at this time for this year. So I can give you a complete final total next week, but the PD is the only total that I don't have as of yet.
All right, are there any discussions? I give my verbal for that to be on the agenda.
Megan Starrett, verbal.
Mike Gregg, verbal.
All right, let's move on to transfers. The first transfer we have is in the street department. It is a reduction in the salary by $25,000, placing it into equipment. And this is to realign the budget for the purchase of the speed monitoring devices. If you remember, we had worked with Mr. Thaird's committee and Ms. Sylvester to get some pricing on these materials so that they can be placed throughout the city and help residents see their speed actually light up and hopefully control some traffic flow. I guess I'll field any questions. I know one question the administration asked when I inquired about making this transfer happen is how many? And I just suggested that I was comfortable with $25,000 and get as many as $25,000 will get us at this point, and let's see their effectiveness. And then we can go from there. Any questions from you? Ms. Creamer.
Yes, when this was brought up initially by Mr. Thairett, was the goal to take money out of a specific department? Today it's the street department to cover this, or was the goal to take it out of carryover to purchase this? Because I recall last year during budget time, you know, the street department, when we were talking about their staffing and if they were up to adequate staffing, I got the impression that additional staffing they would have liked additional staffing, but they were unaware that they could budget additional staffing. But now we're taking out $25,000 out of their salary line to pay for something that council, which is great, this equipment, that council would like to purchase. I don't see this as being right. I think if we feel that this is important, which I agree it is, I think we should look at the carryover and not take it out of a salary line of a department that needs bodies to do work. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll defer to either the auditor or the budget director. I will say that when they spoke to me, you know, my sentiments were we could take it from the general fund or we could take it from streets if the money was there. And this is the account that they came up with. So does someone from the auditor's office or the budget director want to speak to that?
Well, Ed, this is Jane.
Thank you, Jane.
Well, when you inquired about this, we feel it is a street department purchase because that is who's going to be monitoring it and maintaining it and that kind of a thing. And right now, the street department has an abundance of money in their salary line item. It could be because they had people left that department and they just have not been able to find somebody to take over for the people that have left yet. So there's enough money in that line item to get them through the end of the year. And if we don't have to go into the unappropriated balance, we would certainly would prefer not to do that.
Ms. Lippman?
Yes, thank you, Ed. My question would be for the 25,000, can we be refreshed on how many of the speed monitoring devices are able to be purchased with that? And then I also thought that we were looking at some other means of speed control, not just the light up signs. And I guess I'm curious, is there other items that are being, the rumble strips, which I think we talked about before, are those also being considered for purchase within this 25,000? So could we perhaps ask the Safety Service Director?
Yes, Ms. Sylvester, can you speak to the cost of the, to start the cost of the light up signs?
Yes, sir, I can. First of all, I'd like to add, in addition to what the auditor presented to you, the reason there is also additional money in the street department is because we had money in there for the last couple of budgets for additional summer help. We did not hire the summer help at this time because generally speaking, that hiring is done right about the time when we were hit with the restrictions and had non-essential workers not working. So because of COVID-19, the decision was made to not employ the summer help at that time because of the hiring process, to not go through it then because generally speaking, that would have been done in March or April. And by the time we could have gotten people on staff, it would have been time for them probably to go back to school. And there's only so many weeks, according to the contract, that we can have temporary help in the city. So that's where the additional funding, that's why there was additional funding in that account at this particular time. In regards to the equipment, how many will be purchased and so forth, as you remember from the presentation previously, any of the companies, the 3 companies that I reached out to, they did not want to give formal proposals until we did have numbers. And the formal proposals would also include all of the features that the equipment has with it. So if in fact this transfer is put in place, once it's put in place, there is a meeting that's going to be held with the mayor, our engineering department, our street department, and our police department to make the best decision that we can for the purchase of what equipment will help us the very most for speed monitoring and the traffic control that all of you and all of us are looking for. So that right now is the strategy that's in place.
And would that meeting happen, say, within the next 14 to 21 days, so you'd be able to update council as quickly as possible?
Yes, most definitely. I just didn't want to schedule something on all of our calendars if the transfer is not in place.
Well, I'll place my signature on the transfer.
I'll give my verbal to that.
This is Mike Gregg. I give my verbal as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next transfer is in the auditor's office, unclaimed money, reduction by $1,324.80, placing it to the general. And this is to realign the budget to transfer unclaimed funds to the general fund. Ms. Ferraro, do you want to bring everybody up to speed of what that unclaimed fund is about, or money is about?
Sure. Those are a variety of checks that have been issued by the city that no one has cashed. And we put those in an account, And we keep those, we have a time frame that we are required by law to keep it in there. And if no one claims it, then we can transfer it back into the general fund. So right now we have freed up $1,324.80 of that money.
Thank you. I place my verbal signature.
Thank you.
I'll give my verbal, Megan Starrett.
Mike Gregg, verbal as well.
Thank you.
All right. The next one is in wastewater. It's a reduction of plant services and contracts by $18,857.72 and placing that into the insurance. We can let someone speak to this. I believe this is for PEP insurance, and there's been a change to the way that they handle the billing. I didn't know if Ms. Ferrero, did you want to address that, or is there someone else that wanted to speak to that for council?
Councilman Lewis, I can speak to that. This is Barb Sylvester.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Yes, this is PEP stands for Public Entities Pool of Ohio. This is our interior provider for us. And generally speaking, our first installments are always due September the 16th of every year for the upcoming coverage. In the past, PEP always, the installments were broken down by line of coverage. And there was 4 installments by line of coverage: property, vehicles, general liability, law and safety enforcement. And beginning for this year, PEP has made a change, and they are now having the 4 installments will just be divided equally in 4 equal installments. So that changed the amount that is due for each of these installment payments. So you will see this request change then for wastewater, also for parks and for the park and rec fund accounts for their portions. And we will also probably have another transfer out of the general fund for this. But basically, it's an accounting change that's been made by the insurance company. They actually they were making all of their entities that they cover pay for the policies up front, was also what they wanted to pay for this, wanted to put in place for this year, which would mean we would have to come up with the entire amount for the entire year in the first installment. I did send a letter and made a request if they could make an exception for us, explain the situation of our budget and how this works, and gave them some background on our city accounting procedures, how they work. They did grant us that they will still allow us to make this in 4 installments, which again does always help our cash flow and our investments of our money that we leave in our account. But it did change the amounts that are due at this particular time. So that's the explanation as to why we have additional amounts due at this time. But the installments will now be in 4 equal installments.
Any additional questions from anyone on council? I give my verbal for this to go ahead and move forward.
Verbal, Megan Starrett.
Mike Gregg, I give my verbal as well.
The next one we have is City Hall and Public Buildings, reduction of service and contracts by $11,675, reduction in salary janitor, or placing that into salary of janitors, PRS, and Medicare. This is to realign the 2020 budget to have sufficient funds for expenses related to salary, PRS, and new positions or classifications that have been added. Are there any questions? I give my verbal.
Verbal, Megan Starrett.
Mike Gregg, verbal as well.
The next one's coming from income tax. Reduction of the salary of income tax department staff by $20 and placing it into Medicare. And this is just realigning the budget. This is due to an unexpected retirement payout. $20, I'll give my verbal.
Verbal, Megan Starrett.
Mike Gregg, verbal.
Thank you.
Engineering, service and contracts reduction by 80,000. And then placing this into the Duncan Plaza redevelopment. This is to realign the budget to proceed forward with the Duncan Plaza redevelopment bids received Friday, lowest and best bidder. Can we have discussion about this, please? I don't know if this would be Barb, if it would be the mayor, to make this transfer. This would be in addition to the legislation that was passed this evening, I would imagine.
Yes, that is correct. Yes, and I believe Lori is still on the line if you want additional information, but I believe that was the information that she had given to you, Councilman Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
This is funds that are in, they are not earmarked for anything. They are in the, they're in the engineering budget. They were approved at budget time, and we are just realigning those into the proper account. There are accounts made, funds that all the money will funnel into from streetscape, so that there's a good audit trail. So we worked with the auditors to get that new fund created. So it is money that's in the engineering budget that's been approved, but it has not been earmarked for anything.
Any additional questions? Ms. Creamer.
Can I just ask, I'm trying to put all these dollars together. What did that bid come out to be? I know initially for the Duncan Plaza, it was a total estimated construction cost about 1.6 million. I know we removed a couple things from that item list, including the ice skating facility. So what's the total cost that the contractor was awarded?
Sorry about that. It took me a second. I had already put that filed that folder. The total project came out to $1,344,000 and $1,344,20.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I give my verbal to move to have that move forward.
Verbal, Megan Sterrett.
Mike Gregg, I give my verbal as well.
Okay, Ed, before we proceed, I have a question for the auditor's office.
Yes.
This is not signed by the department head. It's only signed by the mayor and the auditor. Do I need a department head signature before I give it to your office tomorrow, Jane?
I think so. Why don't you ask Greg if maybe he'll sign that for us?
Okay, thank you.
All right, the next one, Parks and Recreation. A reduction in salary by $1,324.82, placing that in insurance. This is again PEP insurance that we discussed earlier. I will give my verbal.
Megan Sterrett, verbal.
I don't think this is PEP insurance. I think it's health insurance.
Well, we got corrections today that said it was PEP.
It is PEP.
Okay, I didn't get that. I'm sorry.
Verbal from Mike Gregg as well.
Thank you.
And then the next one is, again, this is for the Legends, the golf course side of Parks and Rec. Reduction in service and contracts by $1,043.45 and placing that into insurance. I give my verbal.
Verbal, Megan Sterrett.
Verbal from Mike Gregg as well.
Thank you.
And that is all I have for the Finance Committee. At this time, we would open up this meeting to public comment. Please keep your comments to under 3 minutes. State your name and address for the record.
President Pro Tem Ed Lewis.
Yes.
I'd like to continue on here, please, if I could. This is Larry L.J. DeLuca, 2954 Veterans Boulevard, Southeast Massillon, Ohio. And yes, I am a constituent over here at the Legends of Massillon. I also want to say hello to Madam President, very nice, and Madam Mayor. Okay, I talking about the Red Center. I have people come to me every day and say the Red Center isn't making money, and they stop and they inbox me and everything. I talked to Cody Post, as in Post Office, director of the Red Center, and I told him I'm an advocate for the city people of Massillon, Ohio. And by that, I mean I help the people and we get to the bottom of it. The Red Center dispatches, as a lot of you folks don't know, for the Massillon Police and Massillon Fire Department. So I was calling Cody to find out about that and all the people that are texting me that, and I wanted to find out how they handle the 911 calls. So I went to Cody to get the facts from a true veteran. He's been at 4 different 911 centers. Even though he came here last September to our 911 Red Center, he's very experienced, and he's giving me the real deal, and that's what I want in the real facts. The Red Center has accidental calls. Yes, they have it. Hang-ups. Nobody's there. They got a medical emergency, okay? They have to send the police to that location, folks. They follow the national standard, the National Emergency Number Association. Again, they have to send a police officer there for drop calls, or you hold too long on your Apple Watch, and the officer has to go there. Some people, they come to a domestic, or they come to somebody that can't talk, meaning they help our citizens here for a medical emergency. They can't talk. We need them there. And for your FYI, Cody told me they handle 18 total agencies, folks. As much he handles as 21. The Red Center answers the call, and they do it good. They answer for the Massillon Police, as I said, and the Massillon Fire Department. And just so you know, at one time there were 300 dispatch centers in the state of Ohio. Cuyahoga County folks had 42 at one time. So what was the idea to have it farmed out? Cody told me at the Red Center there, life and death, you have life and death. And the Massillon Police chasing a bad guy down the street, I feel good about the Red Center because the dispatcher is sitting 6 feet across from the Perry dispatcher, okay? And the same thing for Mr. Tom Burgesser, our fire chief. That dispatcher is sitting 6 feet from the other fire dispatcher. In the 1980s, I think it was a crazy experience for the 911 calls. They didn't have the mark system, okay? And that's where everybody could talk to everybody, and the dispatcher could patch it in, and you could talk. Listen, the Massillon Police Department couldn't talk to the state trooper. All I want to say is God bless Eric and the Massillon Police Department, and God bless the Massillon Fire Department. And I just want to get to, real quick here, if we brought it in-house, folks, that you're telling me that you should do this, your inbox, you're telling me on the street, let's get to the meat and potatoes of this. For an in-house dispatch, you'd have to have 2 consoles. They're $165,000 a piece. You'd have to have 10 dispatchers, 2 24/7 365 at a cost of more than $60,000 or $70,000 plus a year on your benefits. And it could be a lot higher depending on where you're going to get for the benefits. And finally, you people that are telling me not doing your due diligence, your inbox and tell me on the street, Chief Moser, Chief Burgasser, Barb Sylvester, the Safety Service Director in Massillon, Ohio, they each have 3 votes by the Red Center, in which Cody sits. They all sit on Cody's board. They have a super majority of the votes, folks. I just want to say this in summation. Along with Jackson Township, they were the original ones. So the budget's break down. I don't have time for this, but the budget's break down 65% for the police department, 35% for the fire department right off the bat. So when you folks tell me this and you get my inbox and you meet me on the street, please do your due diligence, and I really appreciate that. Again, Larry L.J. DeLuca, 2954 Veterans Boulevard, Southeast Massillon, Ohio. Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem and Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Is there anyone else that would like to speak tonight? Seeing that, I would say this brings this meeting to a conclusion. We'll see everybody next week.